practical application can epistemology possibly have? Many people think it's an erudite discussion of the theory of knowledge and technical aspects about whether or not certain kinds of knowledge claims are justified, to what extent they can be justified, what credence or probability we assign to different claims. Anyone who listens to me knows that I think all of that is wrong. As I sit outside today and look up at the bright blue sky and hear the leaves rustle as the breeze blows between them, there is much I cannot see, but know that's there. For example, what the air happens to be. Not merely that it consists of oxygen and nitrogen, carbon dioxide and trace amounts of other gases, but that oxygen, nitrogen and trace amounts of other gases consists of molecules, most of which are diatomic. The content of that knowledge cannot be seen. Empiricism is false. I cannot simply look at the air in order to deduce what it consists of. I cannot look at the leaves of the trees at which I am staring and discover that they are indeed made of cells. For that I need a microscope. But even with the most powerful microscope, I'm not going to be able to see what the constituents are of the air. And yet I know what the constituents of the air are because I happen to have studied that material and understood the explanations that lead me to an understanding of, for example, the particle theory of matter. That matter is made of subatomic particles which arrange themselves into atoms which can then bond themselves into molecules, large and small. As we like to say, we explain the seen in terms of the unseen. But maybe you're not interested in science. At the moment, many people seem to be highly animated about lights in the sky that they are seeing around New Jersey in the United States. Some are saying drones from another country, or a secret military plan where they've sent out their own drones in order to track down a rogue nuclear weapon. Some of what I see seems for all the world to look like things I've seen before. Commercial passenger aeroplanes, helicopters, and any old drone that you can get down at the local department store, and everything in between. None of what I see seems particularly inexplicable. In other words, there must be an explanation. And I don't think the explanation will be found by invoking aliens on the other side of the galaxy. Nothing about drones seems to indicate technology from a far more advanced civilization that is thousands or millions of years ahead of where we are. Why would they bother with drones? So what practical application can epistemology have on this issue? Well, I can think of one straight away. Don't become dogmatically attached to your belief in one particular theory or another. In fact, don't even have confidence that your theory is true or more likely to be true or probably true or anything like that, nor anyone else's. You can just say, I don't know. It looks to me like it could possibly be just regular commercial aircraft, or drones being flown by teenagers who are playing a practical joke and getting lots and lots of attention on the mainstream media and on social media. It's the sort of thing a lot of teenage boys would do. Bad epistemology leads to people saying, it's probably this, or it's probably that. But all they mean by that is that this is all I can think of, or this is the theory that seems to me to be the most likely. But on what basis does it seem to them to be the most likely? Only because it's that theory they understand. Or perhaps it's a theory that they've invented and would like to be true so that then they get the credit for having figured it out first. Okay, so some people like to get the credit for discovering something first, and they should, especially when it's really important. But on this drone question, if they are indeed being flown by someone else, those are the people who already know what the actual explanation is. Anyone who guesses at what they're doing, well done. You've kind of won the lottery in a sense, because a lot of people will have the same guess. I even saw one fellow going around on Twitter who claimed to be a drone expert, and perhaps he was. He claimed to build drones for the military, and okay, fair enough. And he said, in quite confident tones, the only possible reason why drones would be going low to the ground is so that they could smell things low to the ground. And that meant that these drones would more than likely be searching for a nuclear weapon, detecting the trace amounts of radiation that were being given off by the nuclear weapon.
Hey everyone. My name is John Ferguson. I'm the CEO of Saxon Aerospace here in Wichita, Kansas. But I'm a manufacturer of unmanned aircraft, military-grade unmanned aircraft, as you can see one of my systems here. There's all of these mysterious drones going on off the East Coast, and as a professional, as a subject matter expert, I wanted to give you all my opinion on what I think could be going on with these drones. I don't particularly believe that these have a nefarious intent. I could be wrong, but I want to give you the truth and what I believe. It's my own opinion, and I've not bounced this off of anybody. So, if you think it's bullshit, whatever, that's cool. So I spoke to a gentleman a few months ago who was trying to raise an alarm to the highest levels of our government, which they had their ears closed, about this one particular nuclear warhead that he physically put his hands on. He physically touched this warhead that was left over from Ukraine. And he knew that thing was headed towards the United States. That is a very serious deal. We'll back up a few years. Do y'all remember when those drones were mysteriously flying across the Interstate 70 corridor from Colorado up into Nebraska, down here into Kansas, and out into Missouri? Well, it was believed that those drones were looking for radioactive material because there had been some material that come up missing here in the United States, and they felt like it was high probability that the nuclear or the radioactive material would be taken along the Interstate 70 corridor heading east or west or south. So from what we understand, they were out there trying to find this radioactive material. Now, drones, they have no reason to be in the air at night. The only reason why you would ever fly an unmanned aircraft at night, is if you're looking for something. So my own guess, is that these drones are not nefarious in intent. If they are, they are, but I doubt it. But if they are drones, the only reason why they would be flying, and flying that low, is because they're trying to smell something on the ground. That's it. There's no other reason for a drone to be flying in the air other than to piss a bunch of people off at night. That's it. So, my belief is they're trying to smell something on the ground. Gas leaks, radioactive material, whatever. But I do believe that they're flying low enough that they're just trying to sniff the ground and try to find something. However, I know as a professional, we build professional stuff for the military. I believe that they're actually out there trying to smell something that's very important.
But this to me seems nothing more than a lack of imagination. He works with drones. He says he works with drones that he builds for the military. So he is automatically in a military mindset that the only reason the military would ever fly drones low to the ground would be for the reason that he stated. But why must they be military drones from his own country? Couldn't anyone be playing a prank? Couldn't it be some innocent reason that people are flying drones low to the ground? And is the military telling him every single reason why they would fly drones low to the ground? Is there truly only one reason you'd fly drones low to the ground, namely to search for nuclear weapons or radioactive materials? I don't think so. I could imagine many other things. But then again, I'm not an expert. But this is one problem with that kind of expertise. You have a hammer, that's your expertise, and therefore everything you see seems like a nail. Because it's all you can imagine if all you've ever used is a hammer throughout your life and the only thing you've used the hammer for is nails. You may never have met a panel beater, someone who uses a hammer not to hammer nails into wood, but rather to fix the panels on a car when there's been an accident. Expertise can cloud your judgment. Expertise can cause you to criticize all other theories that you haven't yet even thought of on the basis that you are the expert. And so therefore we can easily dismiss all of the non-experts who are coming up with wacky theories about your area of expertise. In this case, drones. Why would anyone want to believe a particular theory about a drone anyway? And this is why I say what we're after is not whether or not someone believes a particular theory about drones or anything else, but whether or not they know whether a particular explanation is correct, whether a particular explanation has been tested, whether a particular explanation has been evaluated to figure out whether or not the explanation is good, namely, it accounts for the phenomena and better than any other competing explanation. On this subject of drones, it's not really all that important, even though I've seen many reports in the media about how crucial it is that we find out what these drones are. And in one sense, it is important because people are concerned, and people shouldn't be concerned. It's not a nice frame of mind to be in to see a drone flying over your house and not to be given a credible account of what that is. And it is, and I also agree, it doesn't help that the government comes out to say, we don't know what this is, without also saying, it could be just people in New Jersey, bored men in their backyards, it's usually men, flying drones high into the air for the fun of it. America's a very, very wealthy nation. There's more households than not around New Jersey and New York that have drones than don't. Drones are really, really common now. I also heard that recently the Federal Aviation Authority, the FAA in the United States, changed their regulations such that drones can be flown at night. I'm not sure if that's true, but if it is true, that would also explain why there's been a sudden proliferation of drones being flown at night around New Jersey. Previously, if it was against the law, then of course, not as many people will be flying drones at night then. But once the law changes, and you know there's no risk of being prosecuted for flying your drone that you spent some hundreds of dollars on and you wanted to take it out at night in order to take photos from high up of the city beneath you or the suburb beneath you, you would do it now because it's not against the law. So we should expect to see many more drones in the sky at night over New Jersey if the law has been changed there recently. As I record this in order to fact check myself, I've just found that there's been a news report on the ABC released 3 hours ago of the FAA temporarily banning drones in parts of New Jersey. So, do they think that it is just people recreationally flying drones around late at night? One thing we can do with a good epistemology is to say, what would you bet on? What do you guess in your mind is the most plausible explanation? Now, if I had to guess wildly, or not so wildly, I'd say it's just recreational drones, it's just commercial aircraft, it's just a few helicopters. That's all. There is no rogue nuclear weapon. There are no alien craft. None of these things are defying the laws of physics. Everything looks completely normal. On all of the footage, the best footage that can be offered, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary, except if you're a person in New Jersey who's never seen drones flying above your house at night. That could be unusual. But beyond that, I don't think it's a huge mystery. But that's just me. I don't have a good explanation. I don't believe any of these particular ideas. I'm awaiting the evidence. And the evidence will rule out all other competing theories because we will know. Someone will come forward, perhaps in a military outfit, and say, yes, okay, we admit it. It was us. We were looking for a nuclear weapon. Okay then, at that point, we will understand that at least some of these lights in the sky were due to military activities. And then more questions will open up as to why they didn't say this sooner. Perhaps in order to not scare people about the existence of a rogue nuclear weapon in New Jersey. That's possible. But this drone thing is part of something wider. And it is the rapid spread of people being thrilled, excited by the unexplained on social media. And it spreads like wildfire on social media. People are excited about something that no one has an immediate explanation for. In the past, we had to wait, and most people were rather patient, or rather skeptical. Lights in the sky that someone claims was an alien spacecraft. People fell down in one of two camps. It's an alien who's flown from the other side of the galaxy using technology we can't possibly account for given our existing scientific understanding of the world. Or it's a hoax, a mistake, or some other prosaic, very earthbound explanation. It's an unusual impulse. And again, this comes back to having a good epistemology. You really can just wait. You can just wait until the relevant people who are involved in investigating a particular thing, perhaps that could be you, finds out what the answer is. Speculating beforehand is all very well, but if that speculation turns into a belief, something you think must be true or is likely to be true, a theory you're going to defend and get into debates about, seems an unusual impulse and possibly a waste of energy. Although maybe you're having fun. But if you're not, and you're getting angry, as I often see on the internet, between people arguing about it could be drones, it could be the efficacy of a certain vaccine, it could be a kind of health nostrum, it could be a particular politician and what they're going to do. You can just wait. Engaging in prophecy, in other words, trying to guess at things we don't yet know, the content of our future explanations, the content of our future solutions and answers to questions that at the moment are still open, can be a cause of distress, annoyance in some, despair in others. Just wait, and then you'll know. You can be part of the solution by having an open mind, a scientific mindset if you like, asking questions, looking for the relevant evidence in order to rule out some of the explanations that have been given. When it comes to the drone situation, for example, anyone who says the drones show signs of being alien spacecraft because they violate the laws of physics can be ruled out immediately. Because nothing about any of the drone footage that we've seen so far at all demonstrates that they are defying the laws of physics. So anyone who says they must be alien spacecraft on that basis, well, we can refute all such claims. Because they don't. All it says is that the person making the claim does not understand the laws of physics. And I don't care if they happen to be a pilot or an astronomer. That is irrelevant. They would need to give us an account of which laws of physics and why, and how they have ruled out things like parallax error, for example, which is a common way in which people do, for example, overestimate the velocity or the acceleration of particular lights in the sky because they don't know how far away those lights are. And unless you know how far away something is, you can't tell how fast it's going relative to where it happens to be, because you don't know where it happens to be. All you've got is your position and then a random light in the sky. Belief is not a part of our theory of knowledge, because our theory of knowledge is a theory about knowledge. And knowledge is not a purely psychological state. Sure, knowledge exists inside of minds. That's what causes us to behave in the way we do. And by behavior, I mean literally any physical manifestation of the ideas that you have in your mind. So, me speaking to you now, that's a behavior. It's a manifestation or representation of the ideas that I have in my mind, the knowledge that I have inside my mind. But that has touched a tiny sliver of what knowledge actually is. Knowledge is an abstraction, but it must be instantiated somewhere physical, represented, for example, inside of brains in some way, and you may well call the totality of all the knowledge that you have on your brain your mind, some of which is conscious, much of which happens to be unconscious. But also, as I've been at pains to explain, much knowledge is represented outside of the mind, in books, in telescopes, in genomes, in cars. We can reverse engineer much of our technology, meaning that the knowledge is inside of those widgets that we've created. A sufficiently intelligent person, even without the blueprint, could recreate the blueprint by disassembling, let's say, a Tesla car and figuring out how it works. They could extract the recipe for the car, the design blueprints, from the car. Yet, at no point, anywhere as they begin the unscrewing of the panels and the engine and so on and so forth, would they ever encounter much in the way of words explaining what's going on. They would use their creative mind in order to conjecture what is actually happening and then write down the blueprint. They may, of course, make mistakes in doing that. And so the design that they write down explicitly could in fact be different to the actual car itself. And when they try to reassemble it, maybe it won't run at all, maybe it runs better, maybe it just looks a little bit different. Maybe, just maybe, if they were a sufficiently good engineer disassembling a Tesla car and then reassembling it, they might choose to improve it in some way. The example of the drones flying over New Jersey is a lens upon what people's epistemology happens to be. Some people's epistemology, whether they know it or not, is deeply embedded in conspiracy theoretic thinking. Their understanding of the world is shaped by thoughts that are telling them that there are large groups of people coordinating in order to usually deceive the rest of us in some way. These large groups of people, but small compared to the rest of the population, are powerful and wealthy and coming together in some way in order to control the rest of us and how we think. And so on the topic of the drones, the conspiracy theoretic way of understanding this is the military, or some arm of the military, are coordinating in order to find the lost nuclear weapon, or for some other nefarious reason, and using lots of drones to do so. Now, the military certainly are good at keeping secrets, but really, would there not be one whistleblower? We've had whistleblowers over the years, some of whom are credible, some of whom are not. Wouldn't even one person from inside the military leak something to the media to tell them what's really going on if in fact there was a nuclear weapon that went missing from the Ukraine floating down the Hudson River? You'd have to assume so, given that people in the military have families and friends that they care about outside of the military. Conspiracy theories like this always require something approaching perfection. Everyone agreeing about what the right thing to do at every moment happens to be. Of course, it could also be the case that the military are extremely good at recruiting people to particular departments where secrecy is important, who will never tell for whatever reason, because those people are identified as agreeing strongly with the motivation of the department with which they work. I just don't know if the drone department searching for nuclear weapons would be quite so secret just yet, especially when it comes to the so-called homeland. You either know or you don't know, which is to say, you have a good explanation or you don't. You can believe whatever you like, and you can throw a wild guess out there, and you might think your wild guess has some chance of being correct. Many do. But when it's really important, you can just wait for the answer to come. You don't have to engage in prophecy. It's okay not to know. Ignorance is ubiquitous, because even with the things that you do know, there are always going to be open questions. I know that the sun shining today is a star. I know that that star is powered by nuclear fusion. I know the nuclear fusion occurs primarily in the core of the star, which is around about 15 million Kelvin, and it is so hot that the nuclei there, mainly protons, have such high velocity that they can collide, stick together, and release energy in that process, which is called fusion. Those protons are made of quarks, and it's actually the quarks that are the fundamental particles at work during that process. But are the quarks made of anything? Well, that's an open question. That's something I'm ignorant of, and in fact, everyone is ignorant of. We don't have an answer yet. Particle physics is silent on what quarks are made of, if anything. They're taken as fundamental. But what does fundamental mean in this context? It just means that's as far as our explanation goes. Quarks are fundamental. They may well be made of something smaller still. We're yet to find out. Is the sun perfectly stable? It seems to be, across the history of humanity. However, could there be a great solar flare sometime soon that causes great damage to the Earth? We don't know. We're ignorant about so much of what goes on the sun. It's a long way off. It's difficult to observe something 150 million kilometres away whose temperature is so high that sending a probe towards it destroys the probe. We have great difficulty predicting the weather here on Earth, let alone the sun. Should we be worried? Should we be doing things in order to protect our cities more from solar flares and coronal mass ejections? I don't know. We are ignorant. There's so much we do not know. For everything we learn, we figure out there are more problems yet to be solved, more knowledge yet to be created, so many more questions we've figured out that now we need to ask and find the answers to. And that's always going to be the case. Who knows what these drones are? But just in the same way that looking at this bright blue sky and the wind rustling the leaves on the trees, we do not see most of what is actually happening here. All of those molecules, which we cannot see, colliding with the cells of the tree, which we cannot see, causing the motion that we do see. And as I always like to say at this point, no matter how bright the sky looks and well illuminated the tree seems by the sun, in fact, this is all an interpretation. Because everything I am seeing, and you are seeing if you're watching this, is an interpretation of photons of light that have hit the front of your eye, many of which never get through because they're reflected, or then get absorbed by the lens of your eye and the vitreous humour before a small fraction of them reach the retina, where, again, some of them are absorbed and some of them cause the change in shape of a molecule, which sends electricity via the optic nerve back to your brain, where it is interpreted by your mind. There's a lot that can go wrong in that chain of causation, and that chain of causation is itself a theory, making your observation theory-laden. Any of what I've just said could in fact be wrong. It could be worse than all that, so far as we know. We could be getting lots and lots of misinformation, in the technical sense, as in the data that arrives at our retina or sent along our optic nerve or interpreted by our minds could contain error, could have errors introduced. In fact, we should expect that. Error is the natural state of things. But correcting errors is what allows for progress. And that, as I've said before, is an unending process, which means progress can continue forever because we're never going to run out of errors.